Hey everybody, back at it again, working on the Beast or 1969 Firebird high school car or Murder Bird. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that name or not. Missus don't care for it, but what's your take? What should we call this thing? A 494 cubic inch Pontiac stroked and poked engine? Yeah, a lot of potential, a lot of cool names, but I'm just not coming with a creative name at this point, but maybe stick with Murder Bird, but yeah, probably should stop saying that. But nonetheless, what I want to do today, I promised you that we'd probably go for a ride. I used the word promise. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I wanted to take this thing for a drive. But we've had a little mishap with the weather here in Indianapolis. Let me show you out here what's going on. And what you see out here is good old-fashioned frozen liquid sunshine. I say that because I say liquid sunshine because typically when it's raining I'm trying to lift my spirits some. But we've got quite a bit of ice, a little bit of snow, and it's not going to stop anytime soon here. Got about a 1/4 inch ice underneath what you see, about 4 to 6 inches on the ground, about 3 to 4 more to go. So evidently, I'm not going to be driving the car. This is the one time I probably should have listened to the weatherman and put my toys away before the weather hit. So as you can tell out there, we're not going to be taking this thing for a drive anytime soon because it's definitely not a hot mess, but a complete total mess outside. And last thing I want to do is get this thing covered with salt, snow, and slop. So do apologize about that. But in the meantime, we talked about in the last video here about hooking up my cooling fans. This is the old voltage regulator housing. So this is what I did. I made this thing up about 2 years ago. I'm finally getting around to actually hooking it up because now the engine runs. So I'm going to get this thing wired up, hooked up to a temperature switch in the intake so it should cycle at like 175 degrees and turns off and turns on at 190. I forgot the spec, but nonetheless, it's going to cycle the fan so it keeps the engine cool in case I forget to turn the thing on. So that's what this relay is going to control. Got one relay for the cooling fan and one relay which will be running for the air conditioning. I've got a condenser fan I'm going to put in front of this thing because, well, I'm old and I want air conditioning. And I'm just a bit of a spoiled brat when it comes to these things now. So years ago, I did just fine without air conditioning, but we're doing things a little different this time around. And once you see this weird thing here behind me, well, that's when my next video is going to come up here real soon. Now, stick with me on this. I was proposed a question. I've got 3 people that I know personally, and I'm sure many of you out there know somebody, or maybe you're having the same issue. 1970 to 81 second-gen F-body cars. Replacement rear frame rails. They make them for 70 to 73 full length, and they make them from 74 to 81 from about, about here to the rear of the car. Why don't they make the front? That's the part that rots out the most on these, it seems, most of the time, because it has like a nice, perfect little catch tray, and all the sludge hangs out and rots these things from the inside out. So what I've done here, made a little apparatus. That's a frame rail for a 70 to 73. I'm going to put it on here. It's for measuring what that thing is for. And then I'm going to attach this to a car, 1978 Trans Am. A friend of mine has one on the lifts. Rear ends at it, perfect time. I'm going to measure basically the floor dimensions and see how comparable they are. I do know right off the bat, the very rear back here is not the same. So, but that's the only thing that's really technically different. Pretty small modification. And the other thing I do already know, sway bar mounts, definitely different. Same thing can be modified because at this point, what do you do without a frame rail? Can I make this thing work? That's what my next video is coming up. So I'm going to put that little plug out there for you. So stay tuned, subscribe. I'm going to see how that mess comes together. Hoping it becomes a plausible solution for you and 3 of my friends right now looking for the answer. But enough of all that. That's the next video. Let's get to this one right now. What I'm going to show you here is what I've built and how we're going to wire this thing in. Now, close up, I said, you take a quick glance at this thing. I'm going to finish the cover. I'm going to try to find one of the cool Delco ones that say Delco on it. Makes it a whole lot more awesome. But I used my cheap one to tear it apart and see if I can make it work. But I basically just put 2 Bosch style relays inside. A little silicone to kind of give it a little structure. But nonetheless, that looks like a complete mess maybe to you, but complete 100% to me. We've got 2 relays, a main power in, then a voltage in. Now I'm going to use these 4 leads here. I've labeled them on the bottom. You'll see negative, positive, positive, negative. So this is a negative into the relay, and this is a voltage out. That's for one fan. And there's a positive out for the other one, and negative in. So basically, I'm just going to hook up my ground control to this terminal. This goes to my fan motor, and this is the exact opposite fan motor. And this will be like the ground switch, turn it on. So that's how that relay is going to be wired in. But I'm going to use the factory plug, which you saw me salvage from the last video, mount this thing to the firewall in the factory location. And then what we're going to redo, these were the original terminal ends. These are like Packard, I might get this wrong, Series 56. So I might correct that in the bottom of the screen here if I got that wrong. But if you ever want to get these replacements, look up Series 56 terminal ends. This should get you what you need. Just crimp on a new end, slide it into this plug, and you're good to go. So that's what I'm gonna try to get done this time around. I'm gonna get the cooling fan hooked up, which is there on the engine, and then I got a temperature switch already mounted here in the intake. That's the one that cycles on and off at the correct temperatures that I need. So I'm gonna get that wired up here, wired up to the fan, run this engine, and make sure the fan turns on and off. All right, well, let's get started. What I've got is a whole about two 10-foot sections of 2-strand wire here, red and black, and make it pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna make the red wire the hot to the fan. The black wire is gonna be the ground signal to make the relay shut. Now, all I'm gonna do, these are the ends. You can buy them like a bag of like 25 or 50, pretty inexpensively online on the old interwebs. So, like I said, I think it was a series 65 or 56, whatever, don't matter. I'll put the posting on the bottom of it just saying in case you want to use these. Now this little box that I made up, it's like I said, if you caught the details, if you like the stickler for details, I made this thing nearly 2 years ago, and this is what actually started the YouTube channel in a sense. I had a coworker named Reggie, and I was assembling this to make it work for my car because it was a future plan of mine. And he goes, man, you should put that stuff on YouTube. You might be surprised. Some might like to actually see that thing come together. And at that point, I said, absolutely, 100%, no way, no how. So if you like what you see, you'll have to blame Reggie. And if you don't like what you see, well, you blame him just the same. It's his fault that I'm doing this, and this is what actually kind of started it. But these are special crimpers for these style of plugs, or should I say terminal ends. They actually crimp it like the factory style. You got a part here that actually crimps into the wire, and the part that actually crimps the insulation. There's different gauges, different sizes of what you need. In this case here, we're gonna go with the 14 to 18 gauge for the wire, and we'll go a little bigger for the insulation end. But you put it in, squeeze it, and it should close down and make for a nice clean crimp. So, yeah, what's this one here? There it is. And if you do it right, that's a solid, clean connection there, as you can see, for the wire end. That's crimped real nice if I get the camera to focus. So, and then we do the same thing here to the insulation so it stays locked on. And now that's ready to be installed into our plug. Like I said, position 1 is a ground input. Position 2 is the fan output. So we go ahead and stab this thing in. You'll hear a nice click, and that's in there. That makes for a nice clean connection. I said, by the time I mount this thing on the firewall, it's gonna look like it belongs there. You're gonna think it's a voltage regulator, but it's not. So I'll get this other one wired in. I'll get this thing plugged in here, and then we'll see about getting it hooked up to the whirly fan there in the front. Little time lapse here. I got all 4 wires. I said 2 are going to go to one fan, 2 are going to go to the other. Mounted on the firewall in the factory location, and I assure you the cover covers it up just fine. Now this red wire you see coming around, that's going to go inside to what's going to be I'm going to put a relay panel on the air conditioning box. But for the time being, I'm going to run that over the fuse panel to tie into power to get this thing working so I can go drive the car. But the plan is there's rubber ground this rides in. I'm gonna put that through that. And I put the condenser back on to give it more of the authentic original look. But nonetheless, the next step is gonna be I'm gonna run the 2 wires that go, I'm gonna call this fan 1, the radiator fan. They'll lay here in the factory. If you guys are familiar with the little plastic little holder thing that rides here, I'm gonna run the wires across that and tie them into the original loom and loop it around here inside the fender and then come into the fan. Now my ground switch, we talked about that, same thing. I run the wires this way, run it along the factory wiring right through here. Here's my fan cycling switch, and I finally got to look at it really close. If you can get it in the camera, it cycles at 200 and 185, and I've got a 165 thermostat in there. So this will keep the car cool. So basically the fan turns on at 200 degrees, which is a ground switch, then goes open at 185 once the engine gets cooled back down. So that will cycle my fan and keep from cooking the pretty little engine here. So next thing is basically gonna run this wire around, get them hooked up, and then I guess test it and see if it works. Well, anyway, here we go. We've got the wire routed around to the intake. I'm gonna hook it up to my temperature switch, which is just a ground pulse basically. It gets up to temperature, latches to ground, then it should make the relay latch or shut, and then it should turn my fan on. So I'm using the same style plug again. Just because I like kind of keep it looking kind of how Pontiac might have done this in 1969. These are factory style connectors and ends, so why not use them? Because I guess to me the attention to the detail kind of makes the car difference between nice and very nice. So I like these little things, and they're cheap and it actually works pretty nice. And if you haven't figured it out now, I got my favorite drink. It seems to be the limited quantities are not so limited anymore, which is a big bonus for me because we all have our addictions, and mine might just be the Live Wire Orange Mountain Dew. Like I said, the other thing is, like I said, this is just a path to ground. It's looking for ground to turn the fans on. So to test our circuit before we even run that switch, I can touch this thing to ground with the key on, and the fan should turn on. So I intend on doing that here as soon as I get it all wired in. We can make sure it's going to work, and then let the engine run up the temperature and make sure it's going to do its thing. I couldn't imagine doing this all day long, crimping ends by hand, but I suppose somebody has to do it. And a little end goes on just like the factory style. And that's all it takes. And then I'll come back here and tidy all the wiring up when I'm done. But next step is, I've got the red wire around here to the fan. So I'm going to cut it to length here, but my goal is here, once it's in the inner fender well, I'm going to tuck it up inside the fender so we don't even see this wire coming up to the front. But it uses the same connectors on the end here, the same style, but so I'm going to deconstruct this plug and reconfigure it to my wire so there's no butt splices. The less junctions, the better off you are. So the good news is it already has the female end in there, so I just got to pull this wire out, crimp the red one on, and that takes care of my power circuit. Well, here's our fan wires. I said this is blue and black. And I said it gives you a little pigtail, which is fine, but I don't like butt splices and connectors. The least amount of connections or junctions you can get in a circuit, probably the better off it's going to be for reliability, and it also looks a whole lot better. Back that, the intentions and all the little details. Takes a little more time, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. Now, if you didn't see how these things come apart, if you look in the little window here, the little square opening on top of the plug, shove a pick or a small tech drive in there, and you can get that thing to release and pull that wire out. Then we can convert it to run my new red wire here and make a continuous circuit that plugs right into the fan. So I'm gonna pull this thing apart here next. Is gonna be the next step. All right, new end crimped on here. Now we gotta put it in the plug, and it went, let's make sure I get this right. The blue wire was in this one here. So the other thing is, if you get it wrong, you can push the little release and you can flip these things around and reconfigure the, polarity of the motor. If you get it going pushing instead of pulling, well, then you can get it going the right way. Now the cool part is can I do it with one hand? Let's see. And oh, I cheated. I grabbed it. Okay, well, you get the idea. That's supposed to plug in there. There, click. All right, now my new positive lead is on there, and it's continuous, no splices. So now, unfortunately, I'm going to tie the ground somewhere. I said unfortunately, but what I mean is I'm going to tie the ground possibly to the core support. But at this point, nothing's bolted together, nothing's grounded. So I'm going to leave myself an extra length of wire. I may ground it to the battery temporarily until I put the car all together so I have a good, solid ground connection. Okay, a little time lapse, drag you along the whole journey. Talked about running that wire here. Got this one here tied into my temperature switch. Power wire here runs to the fan. Black wire, well, like I said, I ran it temporarily over here to the battery. It's gonna be a really good ground, but that's short term. Once this thing is all bolted together and tidied up, this wiring, of course, won't look like that. I'll use a good chassis ground somewhere, but at this point, I don't have any ground straps anywhere besides from the battery to the engine block. But then on the inside of the car, a little FYI for you on 69 Firebird, say if your car was a convertible or power seats and all those electrical goodies, there's extra terminals in the fuse panel here. This one here in particular, the top one, that one is hot at all times. It's directly hooked to the battery. This one here turns on and off with the ignition, so this is kind of a temporary thing. Again, just get the fan working so I can go drive this car, because that's the goal once the weather gets more gooder outside. But what I've done, I've tied into that. So what I do is I turn the key on. This wire is what powers up my relay panel, relay panel under the hood. But eventually, I use this terminal to run to, well, you'll see at some point, a vintage air kit sitting in there. I'm gonna mount like a relay panel about here, somewhere on the firewall. That'll run all my additional electrical accessories that aren't part of the factory harness. So for the time being, this won't be permanent. Like I said, the tensions and the details, well, this is absolutely sloppy. Temporary to show you how this works, but nonetheless, we'll turn the key to the run position. Then what we'll do is we'll simulate fan operation by grounding out this wire here. So the same thing, got it hooked to the really great connection on the battery there. So if I were to touch this to ground, that should click the relay up there and then turn the fan on. So that works just fine. So all the wiring is good. My relay inside there is going to work just fine. So the next step would be is fire this thing up and let it run. But unfortunately, I can't leave it running because I will probably die of asphyxiation because, well, it's not that great outside. So for the time being, we're one heck of a step closer to get this thing where I can drive this thing down the road. Yeah, so there you have it, all wired up. Unfortunately, I can't let it run, get temperature to verify the switch turns on and off, but very confident that's going to work just fine. The system will work. And so this is kind of a temporary thing. So what was the point of the video necessarily? Well, to show you that you can do things like that. Kind of adds a little twist, a little detail, personal touches to the car that no one else has done, or kind of try something different, so to speak. But and then of course, I'll put a little tip out there that I plan on sharing with you on that, just the same about that rear frame rail. So once the weather gets more gooder, I can let this thing get up to temperature, make sure that fan cycles, and then we're going for a drive. So do apologize about the weather, but I can't control that and absolutely hate it. But it's what it is. It's winter. It happens. So if you haven't seen what I'm going to do with this, check this thing out. Hit the old subscribe button. You want the answer to that question, how do you make a frame rail for a second-gen bird? Well, we're about to try to prove that just the same. And of course, I keep saying attention's in the details, so that's all I'm going to say about that. But nonetheless, appreciate you following me on the journey. I'd love to help you with the progress on your car. Any questions, concerns, comments, or thoughts, something you need some help with or some guidance? I've probably been there, done that, or I can probably get you the answer if I don't have it. My goal is to keep you motivated on your project, keep it going down the road, and we can stay on task, get these birds back on the road, because, you know, gotta save them birds. My daughter came up with that theme, and I absolutely love it, because it's so very, very, very true. And of course, you haven't seen, I got some t-shirts made up. I've ordered 50 first run around, a little expensive to buy right off the bat, but I've already sold about 30 of them. They're just about gone. So if you'd like to get your hands on one, let me know. I've got white and black left, and still have the sizes, but it's getting pretty slim picking. So if you'd like the t-shirt, hit me up as soon as you can, and I might make up some more, but it was kind of a short run just for me to use in the garage, and I got a better discount if I bought 50 of them, if you call it a discount. But nonetheless, I have said enough. It's a little cold out here. I'm done working for today. Next video, hopefully we'll be driving this, or maybe it's doing the frame rail measurements. Either one should be a really good video. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share with your friends, and I'm gonna get the heck out of here, and we'll see you next time.